Mini episode 450 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.info.
The FDH Lounge. You'll want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to a joint edition of the FDH Lounge and Sportsology Radio. Rick Morris and Russ Cohen coming at you today. A very special occasion. This is FDH Lounge mini episode number 450, and in line with tradition, we did this for mini episodes 250 and 350. Russ being an accomplished author as well as being the proprietor over at Sportsology and a longtime FDH Lounge dignitary. We've been reserving this for book segments that we have been covering with Russ, and in the past for 250 and for 350, we covered his books on the Winter Classic and baseball's best rookies, and today we're getting together to talk about the forthcoming 100 Things Ranger fans should know and do before they die. Russ has written this. It is in pre-production. It will be out November 1st, but it's all set to go at that point in time. He wrote this along with one of his two co-authors for 100 Ranger Greats, Adam Rader. Looking forward to breaking it down with him today, learning all about this great new book that will be coming out this fall. My good buddy, Russ Cohen. Russ, congratulations on yet another great book, and I'm sure there's an interesting story behind it.
Thanks, Rick. I'm kind of worried now because I do have another book coming on the horizon, but every time you secure me a spot, you seem to be putting pressure on me to put out another book.
Well, we could always skip ahead to 650, but at the rate we're going, 550, if I was to project, sometime next spring or summer. Does it seem in line with that?
Yeah, it is. That's funny. Yeah, the book came about. The book came about because Adam Rader and I just, we figured instead of talking on the phone all the time, we might as well write another book. And we still were looking to do something with the Rangers, and the publishers at Triumph had this series that you talked about, and they did it for other teams, and they asked us if we wanted to do it on the Rangers, and we said yeah. So we dug in there and started doing more interviews, and Adam's the lead writer on it, and I sort of assisted and got everything together, got interviews together and things like that. We crafted it together, and there you have a book. So it turned out it's turning out great. We did post the cover already. We've had a chance to look at it, and we're real happy because this book isn't exactly like a travel guide, right? But we do talk about places to go and things to see because that's the way it is. But because of the way it is, once you get to a person or a subject and you say, hey, you should go do this or see this and this is why, then it does take you off on a little bit of a tangent about that person. So we were able to write about some players that we couldn't in the 100 Ranger Greats book because they just didn't make the cut.
Well, and as you mentioned, there is, of course, a very well-established franchise with the 100 Things Blank Fans Should Know, et cetera, in the title. And I just want to, again, warn everybody, this is available for pre-order coming out November 1st, 2014. But if anybody thinks they see anything that's available before then, I believe there's a Texas Rangers book out there. So don't order the wrong one by accident. You will be disappointed, and you're going to be fighting Amazon for refunds on that, unless you're also a Texas Ranger fan. That would be a very interesting place on the Venn diagram, if there's anyone that is both a New York Ranger and a Texas Ranger fan. But in all likelihood, somebody orders that one looking for your one, they are going to be disappointed. It is, as you said, a well-established series. It's out there for other teams. How much did that help you guys in terms of a template for the book? Are a lot of these different ones out there, from what you can tell, vastly different from one another, or do they share a lot of the same traits?
No, I think they're pretty different. I think they just share the same template, but then after that, they do give you a lot of latitude to do it your way, to sort of craft it your way to fit into their vision. So I think it's nice, or their series. And so I think it's worked out well. You know, there's even, believe it or not, a couple of stories about the Detroit Red Wings, you know, and nice. I can guarantee you there are some things that you don't know, because I didn't know until we did some interviews and wrote about it. And so we were able to go back even as far as the 1950 Stanley Cup.
Wow. Well, yeah, if there's anything in there about the Red Wings that you didn't know, I can guarantee I didn't know that. So it stands to reason, as two original six franchises, that there would be a lot in there about that, because I'm sure that history of the team is very well documented in the book. We had talked about for 100 Ranger Greats, and again, it sounds like that was a lot more difficult in terms of working out the list between the three of you and hammering it out, and does this guy go above this guy? So how did the process of choosing 100 items here compare to that? I know it was probably a lot easier, but, you know, when you're ranking guys and attaching that number to them, but what were some of the similarities and differences in the process?
I would say there was no arguing for this one. So that was the big difference. We definitely had a lot of arguing and, you know, not mean-spirited, just discussion and debate. There wasn't really much debate. This was more like, let's see what you have in mind, let's see what I have in mind, let's craft the list. And so when you do that, it is a lot easier. And we left room, you know, because, and again, we go back to the very beginning of the franchise, too, with Tex Rickard as the owner. So there is that name Tex in there. So not to confuse even further, but just to be able to have that list and all of a sudden be able to add to it, that's kind of nice, too. And so that's something where we were able to do that. But there's some things in there. There's going to be a section on you should go visit the Hockey Hall of Fame. And when we went to the Hockey Hall of Fame, Craig Campbell and Phil Pritchard were real nice to us, and they let us in the archives. And I have a couple of books in the archives there, and that's kind of nice. The Winter Classic books in there, and the 100 Ranger Greats is in there. But there's also like a treasure trove of memorabilia that they can't put on display every minute of the day, right? So they have to rotate. And so we had a chance to see a lot of that, and then to sit down with Craig and talk about how they acquired it and the story behind it. So there's some interesting items that came out of that, too, because, again, the only way you're getting those stories is traveling to Toronto. And so Adam and I did travel to Toronto. And we probably should thank Ricky Gervais for that, because on the car trip, we listened to a lot of his podcasts. And Adam wasn't a fan, and I was. And afterwards, Adam loved him. And, you know, he would listen to Carl Pilkington on those podcasts and just in disbelief, just the answers that would come out. So it was entertaining. It helped entertain us.
Well, there's no bigger fan of the American Office than me, a major completist of that series. So, yeah, I can understand that. And you have to have something to do on these road trips while you're doing the research, while you're getting these things done. And, again, it sounds like obviously there was a lot that went into it. And as you said, it had to be a tremendous baseline of experience for you guys in terms of material, having done the 100 Ranger Greats book. And also, I would think on a more tangible level, a built-in readership for this book going forward. You guys have a nice apparatus set up, and you've had a Facebook following the whole time. I have been friends with the 100 Rangers Greats account, and I know it's been active the entire time here. So in terms of engaging the intended audience for this book, it does kind of work out well for you that the campaign for the last one never really ended.
No, it's true, and it has. And even though the title's changed, the passion and everything hasn't. And so while we have also a lot of repeat subjects, you know, guys like Leach and Messier, and, you know, they're always going to have stories about those guys. Maybe some will seem familiar, maybe some won't, but we also were able to include a lot of the newer players because, you know, now the Rangers making it to the Stanley Cup have a newer history. And I did get to cover quite a bit of that this year. And so there are some stories from that, too. And, you know, it's not just the quotes either. It's stuff that goes on, you know, behind the scenes that sometimes you see as a writer, but you don't write about it that night because you've got everything shut off and you've got your story posted, but for something like this, it works. So I, was feverishly, as the Rangers kept advancing, we kept extending our deadline, and so we made sure that we included some things.
I was just about to ask you about that, with the Rangers being the Eastern Conference champions this past year and making it to the finals. So you guys had intended to get the thing completed prior to that. That did end up being something that kind of pushed it back as they were adding to their history on the fly. That had to be a nice surprise for you then.
Yeah, and again, there'll probably be one more slight change before November 1st when they name a captain, right? Because chances are that captain's in the book. We're all pretty sure it's Ryan McDonough, and so now if they make that official before it goes to print, we'll have to put that in there. If they wait until like October, then we can't. So there's still maybe one more email. But luckily, when you work with a really good publisher, they're used to that, and so they welcomed it. They knew that the Rangers were advancing, so they knew there was more to be written, and they were okay with that, and it didn't affect the book release or anything. So I think at the end of the day, it's a nice marriage that way, and we're happy because now we're able to engage the fans that maybe didn't care about a lot of the 100 Ranger Greats guys because it was from the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. But now there's more players from today in there. There's a lot more Lundqvist. I mean, again, back in 2009, we had to project what Henrik Lundqvist was going to be, and I didn't have a problem projecting him in the book. I didn't have a problem necessarily even where the number was, and I forget the exact number, but I want to say it was in the 80s or something. But of course now he would rank much higher, but you just never know injury-wise what might happen to a guy. So we took a little element of risk that authors don't like to take, because any book 3-4 years down the road has could fall victim to things like that. So especially if it's a list book, right? Mm-hmm. So you're always having to deal with that. And as an example, like the Winter Classic book, we updated it as late as we could. And if you remember, there was a lockout, and so the Winter Classic was going to still be Toronto-Detroit, but we had quotes in there from Brian Burke, and we couldn't do anything about it. Like, Brian Burke wasn't there when the lockout ended, and what can you do, right? Because you have a deadline. So sure. Same thing with the Ranger captain here. We're going to try and capture that. We don't know if we'll be successful or not. That's up to the Rangers. But the inclusion of Lundqvist is huge because that's something where we had stories on him, but again, 2009 was still fairly early into his career. Now we're 5 years later and really catching the prime years. Right now, this is where people are talking about him being, if not the best, one of the best in the game. And so those stories change. The other stories were the early success stories and some of the stories of him playing overseas. And now it's more of the, hey, he's the heart and soul of the Rangers. So I think that's why you see him on the back cover, too.
Well, absolutely. And as you said, those 5 years make a major difference because you're looking at a guy where when he made the Cup final for the first time this past spring, there was a lot of chatter out there in terms of how long does this guy have left as arguably the best goalie in the game. And he's already reached that point in his career where he's not on the back nine, but it's within sight if you look at the normal growth curve of a goalie. So those 5 years have seen him actualize probably a lot of the things you've projected for him and seen him get to the stage of being a guy with a Hall of Fame pedigree, to be sure. And obviously, it's great that you can cover him in a lot more detail in this book. Any other things that we haven't really hit from the book here that are included in here people should know about? Because it is 100 things Ranger fans should know and do before they die.
Well, we did make our way around Manhattan, and I'll say Adam spearheaded most of it, but I did a little of it where we sort of went in and ranked, not necessarily ranked, but talked about some good eateries and good places to hang out and catch a beer before and after a Ranger game. And I think that's a fun aspect, too, because, that's a part of like hockey culture, and we all do it, right? We all do it before a game, or you're at least, if nothing else, if you're not doing that, you tailgate. But if in New York City, there is no tailgate. It doesn't exist.
Yeah,
so you have to go into a place.
I've only been to the Garden site once in my life, but yeah, I can't quite imagine where one would go for tailgating purposes for that. It's not exactly the Muni lot. Yeah, I'm guessing it's not like prior to Cleveland Browns games here at the Muni lot. It's probably an entirely different scene for that. But like you said, there's so many different places you can go, so many great eateries around there, and so many great pubs.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah. I mean, we're talking Midtown Manhattan here. There's a lot of things that are around there. And as far as places to go, like
just to point out too, we didn't limit it to just places right around the Garden. There are a few that are a little further away, but if we feel like they're a strong hockey bar and had a strong Ranger presence, then we talked about it as well.
Absolutely. 2 words, everybody, mass transit. You can always get to any of these places and then zip over to the Garden. So, yeah, it doesn't need to be right there for it to be of help to people who are looking for something to do before a game. And as far as places to go, I do remember from your 100 Ranger Greats book tour, this was a very clever thing that you guys had done at the time, of bringing some of the actual Ranger Greats into the book signings at various places here. So are you at the point yet of being able to anticipate when the book tour comes about and when you guys are doing signings, any rough plans of doing anything the same as far as bringing people who are part of the Ranger heritage into the signings?
Yeah, I think you'll see at least one of those, maybe more, but we're definitely having book signings. So we're not quite at the planning stage for that, but we are starting to talk to places that we've been to before. So I think you will see some of that, and I think you'll at least see a little bit of that. I don't know if it'll be as player heavy this time, but you never know. Sometimes you never know how these things materialize. But definitely, I would think you're going to see that. So if I had a guess, I would say that. You know, another important aspect is also, remember, the Garden has changed since we did the last book, and the facelift and everything else. So that's certainly mentioned in there too. And I think that's something where you don't anticipate that happening, right? But it's happened a million times already to Madison Square Garden. I mean, it's, MSG, Madison Square Garden Network, it did a series on it once, and it's not always been in that same location. It's moved a few blocks over the years, not for a very long time now. But it even used to be an open air, believe it or not. There was an open air Madison Square Garden that used to have, I think the Roy Rogers show with the horses and everything else, the Wild Wild West show. It used to have that as one of the events.
Well, you're right. It has been at different locations throughout there, and one of these past is prologue kind of deals here. Actually, if you guys are to keep covering the Rangers in this form in the future, in all likelihood, you'll be covering them in a new site because Bill de Blasio, the new mayor there, sort of pandering to some of the people who want to undo what happened in the 1960s with the MSG, everything that happened with it materializing at that site. Now it looks like it's going to be elsewhere here, and that's got to be very, very problematic, hunting for a real estate somewhere in Manhattan.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that happens. I mean, there's talk about it. There's a lot of time. But, yeah, I mean, there was that last MSG that if people look up pictures, it was like a really nice Art Deco-y kind of look. And a lot of people didn't like that when that went away.
Yeah, and the changes that materialized then, I think it led to something where I don't remember the specifics of it, but whether it's a lease that runs out in 2023 or something like that, something that gives them the right to revoke it at that point in time. So people are, when they check out this book, they're going to be checking out a piece of history that in some ways is about to become a bygone piece of history in terms of hockey being played at that site, and of course it covers the hockey played at the previous sites.
Let's not rush it.
Exactly.
We've got a few years.
Well, I'm not pushing the history angle only on that, Russ. There's a lot of different things that people can find here in this book. The history of the Rangers at the present site for however long they're there, the history of the Rangers at the previous sites. It's a heritage unlike few teams in hockey, or sports as a whole, really, when you look back at everything that has encompassed this. And I'm sure, like 100 Ranger Greats, it will be something that not just Ranger fans, but hockey fans in general will look forward to. 100 things Ranger fans should know and do before they die. Of course, you, Russ, writing this with Adam Rader, one of your two partners for the 100 Ranger Greats book, so people can look forward to that being released November 1st, as we said, available for pre-order on Amazon. And again, I couldn't think of a better way to celebrate 450 mini episodes of the FDH Lounge than carrying on our tradition here. 250, 350. Hopefully we'll be able to do this again for 550 with your next book. But always a lot of fun to break it down with you, and always very happy for the success of these books. So thanks very much for educating the people on this, Russ, dropping a little bit of knowledge on them about what they're going to find.
No, appreciate it, and it was great seeing you in Cleveland, and I'm sure I'll run into you again, maybe even before the next book releases. Who knows?
Very possibly, yeah. You and I had referenced that off air with the All-Star game for the NHL being in Columbus next year. One can always hope. Yep. But, yeah, great to see you then, my friend, and glad you made it back safely. That was a very, very busy travel weekend that you had there, and I'm sure that travel will be in your future again, both covering hockey and especially promoting this book once it comes out. We look forward to that. We look forward to the release of this excellent book, November 1st, 2014. Go get it pre-order right now on Amazon. Thanks very much, Russ, and thank you all, everybody, for tuning in today to this joint edition of the FDH Lounge and Sportsology Radio.
As we bring the show to a close, we would like to extend our deepest gratitude to NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox, all Clear Channel affiliates, TNT, TBS, USA, UPN, Deadspin.com, YouTube.com, YTMND.com, MySpace.com, various blogs, Fox News, CNN, CNBC, MSNBC, IamBoard.com, Billboard.com, Google.com, ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN News, ESPN Classic, NBA TV, NFL Network, Sports Time Ohio, Athlon Magazine, Comedy Central, Cartoon Network, The Boomerang Channel, QVC, BET, The Spice Channel, Steno Notebooks, Manwich, Papermate Office Supplies, waitresses, strippers, bartenders, garbage men, janitors, microwave popcorn, the writers of The Office, Scrubs, Entourage, My Name is Earl, Oz, Metalocalypse and the Boondocks, Aquafina, and the Periodic Table of Elements.